Right now, the United States and Iran are closer to a direct confrontation than they've been in years. Missiles, military bases, rising tensions across the Middle East. And every time something happens, the same question comes up. How did it get this far? Because this isn't just a normal geopolitical rivalry. This is a relationship that completely reversed. From cooperation to confrontation. From strategic partners to long-term enemies. And what makes it even more interesting is that this conflict didn't start with war. It started with a decision. A decision that at the time seemed strategic, but over decades reshaped an entire region. So if you really want to understand what's happening today, you have to go back. Before we go into history, let's understand the situation today, because what's happening right now isn't isolated. The United States has military bases across the Middle East. Iran has influence across the region through alliances and aligned groups. And over the past few years, the tension between them has been increasing steadily. There have been missile strikes, drone attacks, cyber operations, economic sanctions, and strategic moves on both sides. Sometimes it's direct. Most of the time, it's indirect. But the key thing to understand is this. This is not a frozen conflict. It's active, it evolves, and it keeps getting closer to a tipping point. But to understand why this keeps happening, we need to go back to where it all began. Let's go back to 1953. At that time, Iran had a democratically elected prime minister. His policies focused on national control over resources, especially oil. But this created tension with Western powers, because oil wasn't just an economic resource. It was strategic, and this is where the United States stepped in. Along with its allies, it supported a coup. The existing government was removed, and a new leadership structure was installed, one that was more aligned with Western interests. At the time, this was seen as a strategic success. It ensured influence, it secured access, and it strengthened alliances. But here's what's important. While this worked at the geopolitical level, it created something much deeper inside Iran: resentment. Because from the perspective of many Iranians, this wasn't just politics. It was interference. It was control from outside. And even though the country moved forward under new leadership, that feeling didn't disappear. It stayed. And over time, it grew. After 1953, relations between the United States and Iran became very strong. Iran became one of the most important allies of the United States in the region. There was cooperation in military strategy, economic development, regional security. Iran's leadership aligned closely with Western policies. And from a geopolitical perspective, this relationship made sense. It created stability, at least on the surface. It gave the United States a strong partner in a critical region, and it positioned Iran as a key player in global strategy. But again, there was a gap between the government and the people, because while the leadership was aligned with the West, not everyone in the country supported that direction. There were growing concerns about political freedom, economic inequality, foreign influence, and these concerns slowly turned into opposition. At first, it was quiet. Then it became more visible, and eventually, it reached a breaking point. In 1979, everything changed. A revolution swept through Iran. The existing government was overthrown, and a completely new system took over. This new leadership had a very different vision. It rejected Western influence. It rejected previous alliances, and it redefined the country's direction. Almost overnight, the United States went from being a close ally to being seen as an adversary. Diplomatic ties were cut, communication stopped, and tensions escalated rapidly. But one event made things even more intense: the hostage crisis. American diplomats were taken inside Iran and held for over a year. This wasn't just a political event, it was symbolic. It represented the complete breakdown of trust. And after that, the relationship was no longer just strained, it was fundamentally broken. After the revolution, something interesting happened. Despite the hostility, there was no direct war between the United States and Iran. Instead, the conflict evolved. It became strategic, indirect, layered. Iran began expanding its influence across the region, not through direct military confrontation, but through alliances and support networks. At the same time, the United States responded in its own way. Sanctions, military presence, strategic partnerships. This created a new kind of conflict, one that didn't have a clear battlefield, because it wasn't happening in one place. It was happening across multiple countries, multiple groups, multiple layers, and this made it more complex and harder to resolve. Then came a major turning point in the modern phase of the conflict: Iran's nuclear program. From Iran's perspective, this was about development, energy, national capability. But from the perspective of the United States and its allies, this raised serious concerns, because nuclear capability changes everything. It shifts power dynamics, it increases strategic risk, and it introduces the possibility of escalation at a completely different level. This led to years of negotiations, international agreements, sanctions, monitoring. At times, there was progress. At other times, tensions increased again. And even today, this remains one of the most critical aspects of the relationship, because it directly affects how both sides calculate risk. Now, let's move to recent years. The conflict has entered a new phase. We're seeing more direct actions, targeted operations, missile strikes, drone warfare, cyber activities. Both sides are more active, more visible, and more responsive. The United States continues to maintain a strong military presence in the region. Iran continues to expand its influence through regional networks, and the interactions between the two are becoming more frequent, more intense, and more unpredictable. What used to be mostly indirect is now moving closer to direct confrontation, and that's what makes the current situation different. Now here's why this matters beyond just these two countries. This region is critical to the global economy. Oil supply, shipping routes, energy markets, even small disruptions here can have global consequences. Prices can change, markets can react, policies can shift. And because both the United States and Iran are deeply connected to these systems, any escalation affects more than just one region. It becomes a global issue. So when you look at the United States and Iran today, you're not just looking at a current conflict. You're looking at a long chain of events, decisions made decades ago, still influencing what's happening now. From the 1953 coup to the 1979 revolution, to decades of indirect conflict, to modern escalation, this is not a simple story. It's layered, it's complex, and it's still evolving. And that brings us to the most important question. Not what happened, but what happens next. Because the direction this conflict takes could shape the future of an entire region, and possibly the world.